He was quiet, attentive, and always there for me. And then he started deciding when I should speak, what I should feel, and even when I should pick up the camera. I thought it was love. Now I know it was a trap. My boyfriend once said, "I see you better than you see yourself." I smiled then. It sounded like something beautiful. Now I understand, it was a warning. After my mother died, I met a man who seemed calm and caring. His silence was healing at first. But then it became a place where I began to disappear. My mother died last fall. And since then, I haven't known what to do with my weekends. Sunday was always her day, coffee, a walk, little things. When she was gone, Sunday became just a hole in the week. Once I went to a photo exhibition. I stood in front of a picture, an old wall, a narrow window, a strip of light. And I said aloud, "This is probably about how you live after loss." A man's voice replied from nearby. "Or about the shadow that hasn't gone anywhere." I turned around. Tall, calm, looking straight ahead. "Dan," he said simply. We walked through the exhibition together. He didn't try to teach me or impress me. He just asked from time to time, "What do you see in this photo?" "A place where it hurt, but now it's a little easier," I replied. He just nodded. And for some reason, that nod made me feel calmer. After the exhibition, we went to a coffee shop. I said that after my mother died, it was hard for me to fill my days. He listened attentively, without interrupting. He just said, "When you lose someone close to you, it seems like you have to be stronger. But in reality, you just have to allow yourself to be weak." And he fell silent. It was quiet. But this silence no longer hurt. That same evening, he wrote, "It was nice being with you. If you want to see more photos, I'm in." I looked at the message for a long time and replied, "I want to." We started seeing each other. At first once a week, then more often. He showed me his favorite courtyards, talked about light, simply, without using fancy terms. When I took pictures, he didn't lecture me or laugh. He just asked, "What exactly do you want to preserve?" That same evening, I photographed a strip of light on the table and almost posted it on my stories. "Just one request," he said softly. "Don't post anything without me. Not because I want to control you, just so that we're less visible." I nodded. It seemed like a small thing. Just ordinary concern. It was easy with him. No ups and downs, no drama. He was never late, never disappeared, always asked if I was comfortable. After my loss, it really felt like therapy. Gradually, he started staying overnight. He folded his clothes neatly and washed the cups after tea. And I started calling my dad less often. Before, it was every other day, now it was once a week. Dad kept asking, just like when I was a child, "Have you eaten? Are you dressed warmly?" And Dan would say, "You're an adult. You know everything yourself." And it really did get easier for me. One evening, as the kettle whistled on the stove, he said, "I feel like I can see right through you." "What do you mean?" "You're not silent because you have nothing to say, but because you're afraid of ruining the moment. I can feel it." He spoke calmly, as if he were simply stating a fact. And I thought, maybe he really does see me better than I see myself. My old camera was sitting on the shelf. I used to take it everywhere with me. But after my mother died, I hid it away. I didn't want to capture the silence. One day, I just dusted it off. I clicked the lid shut and heard the familiar sound of the shutter, the one I used to love. His voice came from the door. "Are you going to take pictures again?" "I don't know." I just wiped the dust off. He came closer and gently touched my wrist, as if checking to see if I was tense. His fingers gently pulled my hand down, and the camera slipped out of my palm. "Be careful, don't overexert yourself," he said evenly and placed the camera on a shelf slightly above eye level. I involuntarily took half a step back. My wrist still remembered his touch, cold as metal. "You can get it when you want," he added in the same calm voice. That night, he hugged me and whispered, "You've become calmer." I like that. I thought I liked calmness too. I didn't know then that his calmness was a silence in which sounds disappeared. That was the beginning. I thought he was saving me from pain. In reality, he was just accustoming me to silence, which was easier to control. Dad called on Friday morning and said he would come next Saturday. His voice was steady, a little tired after the operation. I wrote down in my notebook, bed, towels, dinner. I wanted him to feel comfortable at my house. Just him, no one else. After work, I stopped by the electronics store. There was a camera in the window, almost the same one my dad and I used to use. The familiar weight, the simple menu. I remembered how we used to catch the sun near the school, how he laughed at my mistakes. I bought it. A nice box, a memory card, a strap. A little bit of happiness wrapped in paper. I was wrapping the gift at home when Dan came into the kitchen and wiped his hands on a towel. "What's that?" "A gift for Dad. I want us to go out in the morning and take some pictures." He pulled the box closer and read the model name. "Seriously? A camera? Maybe a radio-controlled car too?" "Dad's not a kid." I smiled automatically, but the warmth in my chest faded. "He loved to take pictures. It will bring us closer." "Well, okay. It's just a little strange. At your age, at his age. But do as you see fit," he said evenly. He watched as I tied the ribbon. "It looks nice. Just please, no show. I don't like it when everyone is watching. It's not about the show. I just want to make him happy." "Okay. As you say," he smiled briefly, but something in his gaze was alarming. We made a menu and wrote down who would buy what. A few days passed without incident, work, groceries, short messages. On Wednesday, he asked in the elevator, "Where will Dad sleep?" "In the living room. I've already made the bed." "Okay. I'll be at work until lunchtime on Saturday. If I'm late, don't be upset." "It's fine." On Saturday morning, I aired out the rooms, baked some fish, and chopped some greens. I put the gift by the TV. A message from Dad, "I'll be there at 2. I exhaled. He arrived almost on time. He had lost weight and moved cautiously. The smell of homemade bread mixed with the fish from the oven. "How are you?" I asked. "Hanging in there. How about you?" "Fine." Dan came out and shook my hand. Briefly, without fuss. I set the table and listened to their voices. It was peaceful. Until Dan threw the first stone. When they sat down, I handed him the package. "This is for you. I want us to have something to do together." Dad unwrapped the paper, saw the box, and looked up. He was silent for a moment, then smiled broadly. "You. Thank you. Very much." He ran his fingers over the box as if it were an old friend. His eyes sparkled. I looked at Dan. He sat upright, smiling politely, but his lips were tense. He drank some water. "Well, now I'll have something to do in retirement," he said jokingly. Dad wasn't offended. He took out the camera and asked for help putting on the strap. We put everything together. He took a test shot, me at the table. "It works well," he said. I felt a simple joy. It was as if something small but real had returned. And then Dan repeated his joke. "Well, now we have 2 photographers. One takes pictures, the other takes scenes." There was a brief silence in the room. The knife in Dad's plate froze. One of Dan's friends raised his eyebrows, and the neighbor seemed to pretend she hadn't heard. The air became thicker. "I just love to take pictures," Dad said calmly. "And Anna always organizes everything. And that's good." "I'm just kidding," Dan added with a smile. I nodded. But something inside me cracked. After dessert, Dad said, "Shall we go out for some fresh air?" We stood outside for about 10 minutes. "It's nice here," he said. "Stay a little longer. Don't rush." "I will." When we returned, Dan was already clearing the table. Dad went to take a shower. We were left alone. I wanted to thank him, but he beat me to it. A lot of attention to the camera. But if that's what you prefer, that's fine. It's a gift. It's important for him to have something to do. It's nothing. It's just weird to sit on the sidelines while everyone else is going ooh and ah. Maybe I'm not used to it. I looked at the plates in the sink. I didn't want to put anyone in an awkward position. "It's okay. I asked you not to make a show of it. But you did it your way," he said quietly and turned back to the dishes. I felt a chill in my chest. I went to check on Dad's room. When he fell asleep, I went back to the kitchen. Dan was sitting with a cup of tea. "You made me look weird. Like I was extra." "It wasn't like that. We were just giving a gift." "Just is your favorite word. I thought we were a family." "We are a family. It's just his day today. He's had surgery. I wanted him to feel supported." "I understand," he said evenly. "The main thing is that everyone is happy." He got up, took the camera from the table, and put it on the cabinet, higher up. "So it doesn't lie around," he said. "It might fall." I didn't answer. When I lay down, the scene with the gift kept replaying in my head. That joke at the table, the look at the camera. Like a small chip in the glass. Nothing happened, but the crack is already there. In the morning, he brought me coffee and kissed me on the forehead. "Everything okay?" "Yes." "Then let's go get some greens. We'll show Dad the market." I nodded. The day seemed normal. I clung to that feeling, as if our peace depended on it. On Dad's birthday, the house smelled of bread, greens, and fish. Everything was boiling in the kitchen, the kettle, the oven, the conversations. I bustled between rooms, checking to see if there was enough space for everyone. Dan was cutting lemon into thin slices, and for the first time in a long time, I felt that it was really warm at home. "Are you nervous?" he asked. "A little." "Don't worry, everything is under control." Dad came home with a bouquet of asters and a bottle of wine. The guests were already there, a neighbor, a colleague, 2 of Dan's friends. Laughter, conversation, a little wine. It was cozy, just like it used to be. I relaxed. I even laughed. In the evening, Dad took out the camera I had given him a week ago. He looked at the buttons and winked. I've already forgotten which side to look at. Everyone laughed. I took a few pictures, Dad, the window, the table. For a moment, everything was really good. And then Dan said, "Well, now we have 2 photographers. One takes pictures, the other takes scenes." Everyone fell silent. Someone smiled awkwardly, and Dad pretended not to hear. I replied calmly, "Dan, you're good at scenes too." My voice sounded dry, without warmth. The conversation continued, but it was somehow cold. When everyone left, we cleaned up in silence. His silence was not calm, it was tense. I washed the last plate, and he said, "You made me look like a fool." "What?" "You made everything revolve around him. Even the guests. Even the evening. Dad is in charge again. It's not a competition. It's just a celebration." "Just," he repeated quietly. "You don't even understand how it looked. Dan, he's just had surgery. I wanted him to feel good. And I don't care, right?" I stood there with a towel in my hands and didn't know what to say. He spoke calmly, but every word cut deep. "I thought we were a family. But you're reaching back to the past again." "I'm right here, but it's like I'm not. I didn't mean to hurt you. It's just a gift." Your just cuts like a knife. He took the cup, took a sip, and went into the bedroom. I stayed in the kitchen. I could hear the clock ticking. Dad had left his camera on the windowsill. The lamp was reflected in the lens. I picked it up to put it away. At that moment, Dan came out again. "Let me take a look," he said calmly. He took out the memory card, clicked a few buttons, and scrolled through the menu. "I'm checking to see if everything recorded properly," he said casually. Then he put the card back in and put the camera back in its place. "Everything's fine." He went into the bedroom. I was left alone and stared at the camera for a long time. It felt as if he had just touched something personal to me, not just a piece of equipment. When I lay down, Dan was already lying with his back to me. I listened to his steady breathing and realized that something inside me had broken. No screaming, no drama. Just a click, and everything changed. The wine had long since dried up, but the cold between us remained. In the morning, Dan acted as if nothing had happened. He made coffee, put a cup in front of me, and kissed me on the forehead. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes," I said, even though I had lain awake all night. He talked about work, colleagues, plans for the week. I listened and caught myself thinking that he was speaking very calmly, even too calmly. As if nothing had happened. After breakfast, he said, "Yesterday. I guess I was just overtired. Don't take it to heart. It's just one of those days." "Okay. I don't want any arguments." "Neither do I. We're adults, right?" His smile seemed sincere, but something about it didn't add up. The week passed quietly. Dan became even more attentive. He wrote in the middle of the day. "Have you eaten? Did you remember your jacket? It's cold today." Once, after sending me a message like that, he said, "I put a weather and step counter widget on your phone so you don't forget your jacket and get more exercise." "Why?" "I care," he smiled. "And give me the password so I can update it when necessary." I gave it to him without thinking. I used to see it all as caring. Now I see it as surveillance. One evening, when I was talking to my dad on the phone, Dan came out of the shower and asked as he walked by, "Is that him?" "Yes." "Say hi. And tell him I helped with dinner." After the conversation, he asked, "What did he say?" "He said thank you." "That's it?" "He didn't ask about me?" "No." "Oh," he nodded briefly. Then he took my phone and took a few photos. "Why?" I asked. "I want to see you even when you're not here. For my wallpaper." I smiled. But when he went into the room, I felt a tightness in my chest. The next day, I was texting a colleague. Dan noticed. "Who is it?" "From work." "Why not yesterday?" "I forgot." "You never forget," he said and left. I sat with the phone in my hand, as if waiting for permission to answer. In the evening, he was especially tender. He made tea, sat down next to me, and put his hand on my knee. "Are you happy with me?" "Yes." "Really?" "Really." He smiled and changed the subject. And then I lay awake and thought about how much I had to keep quiet to maintain peace. Dan often took pictures of me at home. Me at the stove, me on the couch, me laughing, looking away. "Look how beautiful you are," he would say. I nodded. But in every shot, I saw some tension. As if I was posing, even when I didn't want to. One day he put my photo in a frame. "It's a beautiful shot. So peaceful," he said. I looked at it and for the first time thought that this piece looked like frozenness. That same evening, I took out my old camera. Just to look at it. The cold body, the familiar sound of the button. An empty memory card. Dan came into the room. "Decided to take pictures again?" "I don't know. Just checking." "Why now?" "We agreed not to overload ourselves while everything is settling down." I didn't remember any agreement, but I didn't argue. He took the camera, looked at the screen, and put it back. "Don't forget to save your energy," he said and touched my shoulder lightly. "I just wanted to check if it works." "Of course. But it's better to put it off for now so you don't get distracted." The next day, he came up to me with his phone in his hands. "I made a backup copy of your photos. It's more convenient that way." "To my account?" "To ours," he said calmly. "Do we have a shared account now?" "What's wrong with that?" "We're together." I didn't answer. I just nodded. After that, I never touched the camera again. It stood on the shelf like part of the interior. The weeks passed smoothly. I learned to sense when to be silent, when to smile, when to just nod. I wrote short messages to my dad and busy to my friends. Dan nodded. "That's right. Save your strength." Sometimes it seemed to me that I was living inside a photograph. The light, the frame, everything was beautiful, but motionless. And somewhere deep inside, something was beginning to awaken. Quietly, without form. But I could already feel it, it was alive. I was cleaning out the closet and came across an old box with my mother's photographs. In one, I am laughing with my hair tousled. In another, my father and I are on a bridge. He is holding my shoulder, and I am looking away, at the sun. I sat on the floor, spreading the photos around me. It was a strange feeling, as if I were looking at another person, lighter, freer. I touched one of the photos, and something tightened in my chest. Dan came into the room. "What are you doing here?" "Old photos. Just reminiscing." He sat down next to me and picked one up. "You were completely different. So light." "I guess so. And now you're real," he said. "Calm, mature. Without that childishness. I like it better this way." He said it gently, even with a smile. But inside, I felt cold. Later, I looked in the mirror. The face was the same, but the eyes were different. No sparkle, no lively expression. Maybe it's just age? I thought. And then I thought, no, it's not age. That night, I couldn't sleep for a long time. I took out my camera and turned it on. I heard a familiar sound, click, just like before. I raised it to take a picture, but my hand wouldn't move. It was as if someone had stopped it. I turned off the camera and put it back. The next day, Dan suggested, "Let's go out of town for the weekend. My colleague is having a picnic by the river. You'll relax." "I don't want to." "Why?" "You said yourself that you were tired." "I just want to stay home." "Home again, alone again," he said coldly. "You're pulling away." "No, I just want some peace and quiet." "I worry when you're alone," he added softly. "It's not about control. I just see that it's hard for you without me." It sounded gentle, but I heard an order in it. I didn't answer. In the evening, he brought flowers, put them in a vase, and hugged me from behind. "I'm sorry if I'm harsh," he whispered. "I just want you to be happy." "I know," I said, but inside, the doubt remained. The days passed in the same way, work, coffee, dinner. My phone was on silent. Dan didn't forbid anything, he just looked at me in a way that made it unnecessary to ask for permission. Sometimes he would say, "You've changed. For the better." And I would think, yes. But for whose better? One evening, I picked up the camera again. I went out onto the balcony. The sky was orange and warm. I focused and pressed the button. The photo came out blurry. My silhouette was reflected in the glass, with the sky behind me. I looked and didn't recognize myself. It was as if I was there, but not quite. I put the camera on the table and covered it with a scarf. When Dan came back, he asked, "What did you do during the day?" "I worked. I cleaned." "That's all?" "That's all." He nodded and kissed me on the temple. It's good that you're calm again. I smiled so he wouldn't see how hard it was for me. That night, I lay with my eyes open. The camera was on the table. It seemed to be looking at me. Quietly, without a sound. And I thought. Perhaps people don't disappear suddenly. They fade away, little by little. Frame by frame. On Saturday, I went to see my dad. Dan didn't object. He said he had to finish a report and that a few days apart would even do us good. His voice was calm and steady. And I felt relieved. The road was short, but the silence in the car felt new, not heavy, but pure. I listened to the sound of the tires and caught myself thinking that it had been a long time since I had been alone. No questions. No clarifications. No, where are you now? My father's house stood by the river, old, with low windows and the smell of fresh bread. He opened the door before I rang the bell. I knew you'd come early. You always come early. I laughed. It was strange, when someone was just waiting for you. Everything inside was familiar, the kettle under a towel, the old radio, the stack of books on the windowsill. After breakfast, Dad took out a box of photographs. Not the ones I have, different ones, older ones. Here you are catching the sun, he said. Do you remember how we chased the light so it wouldn't escape the frame? In the photo, I am small, barefoot, holding the camera upside down and laughing. You said then that you had to catch the light while it was still alive, he recalled. And you laughed yourself when you overexposed it. I smiled. But something tightened inside me. Are you happy? He asked suddenly. I fell silent. My fingers clenched the photo. I don't know, I said honestly. Dad nodded. He didn't ask any more questions. He just put the kettle on. We sat in silence, listening to the water boil. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel oppressive. After lunch, I went out to the river. The sun was shining on the water, and the grass smelled like childhood. I took the old camera my dad had once given me and pointed it at the water. A few shots. Imperfect. But alive. When I returned, my phone was lit up with messages. When are you coming back? You didn't even text to say you got here. Apparently, Dad has time for me, but I don't have time for him. If you don't care, don't come back. I stared at the screen for a long time. No panic. No fear. Just calm, the same calm as on the river. I put my phone face down and didn't touch it until evening. Dad was making dinner. We ate bread and butter and talked about trivial things. He didn't ask about Dan. I didn't mention him. And that just turned out to be the most important thing. Before going to bed, I looked through my photos. In one, there was water, the sun, and my silhouette on the grass. I looked real. Without tension. Without control. I swiped my finger across the screen and thought that for the first time in a long time, I saw myself not as part of someone else, but simply as myself. That evening, I fell asleep quickly. And my dreams were light. Just the river, the light, and the silence that you don't have to catch, it's just there. When I returned to the city, Dan was waiting at the entrance with flowers, asters, the same ones my mother loved. They're beautiful, I said. I knew you'd like them, he smiled. I've already made dinner. The apartment smelled of herbs and wine. On the table were pasta, 2 plates, and candles. He spoke evenly, calmly. I missed you. And I realized that I was wrong. Pause. I was just afraid of losing you. I did stupid things because I love you. The words sounded right, but I felt empty inside. No relief, no resentment. It was like watching a movie without sound. I don't want to fight, I said. Neither do I, he replied. I just want you to hear me. We had dinner. He talked about a new beginning, about traveling, even about a joint exhibition. I nodded and listened. Then he brought a large envelope and a frame. I thought we needed a little light in our home. I made a collage of our best photos. He laid out the photos in front of me, one by one. In all of them, I was either standing still or looking away. Cheerful, lively, nowhere to be seen. He looked closely at each photo and set aside only the calm ones. "These are the best," he said with satisfaction. I didn't answer. He gathered the selected photos, put them in a frame, and placed it on the dresser. Right in the center. Then he moved it a little and covered my work notebook and camera with it. "That's better," he said. "Now it's in order." I was silent. I just watched him adjust the frame so that it stood straight. Then he came closer, put his hand on my shoulder, a little harder than necessary. "Sit down. I'll clean up myself." I sat down. He stood with his back to me. "You know," he said quietly, "I want us to start over. No pauses. No distance. I want you to choose me. I didn't leave you. But you weren't here." His voice became muffled. "There, with Dad, you're different. I saw your eyes." I was silent. He put the plate in the sink. The glass clinked as if it had cracked. "I just want you to choose me. Me, not him, not work, not yourself," he said quietly but firmly. And then I felt something inside me freeze completely. "I don't want to choose anymore," I said. "I just want to live." He turned abruptly. His eyes were filled with anger and despair. "You don't understand anything. I put everything into us, and you're destroying it." "I'm not destroying anything," I replied. "I just don't want to make excuses anymore." He slammed his fist on the tabletop. Wine spilled in a thin red streak. For a second, he seemed to be frightened himself, then quietly said, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's just my nerves." I looked at the stain. "Don't wipe it. Let it dry." He didn't understand, but he didn't argue. After that, we were silent. I went to the bathroom, washed my face with cold water, and looked in the mirror. I didn't care how I looked. And for the first time, that indifference didn't scare me. When I returned to the bedroom, he was already lying on his back. He was breathing evenly, but I knew he wasn't asleep. I lay down next to him, without touching him. I looked at the light from the street falling on the floor. There was something new in this silence, clarity. I realized that I was no longer afraid of anything. Not even him. Not even what would happen next. The light slid across the frame with my photo. In the photo, I was standing by the window, motionless. And for the first time, it seemed to me that the woman in the photo was not me. I woke up before him. The apartment was filled with the silence of the morning. Cold winter light poured in through the window. I made coffee without turning on the lamp and sat on the windowsill. My phone was lit up with messages, but I didn't touch it. Let it wait. Dust swirled in the air in the rays of light, and for the first time, it seemed to me that this was also life, quiet, uncontrolled. Dan came out of the room and kissed me on the cheek. "Are you awake?" "Yes." "Are you thinking about something?" "Just looking," I said. He went to take a shower. I looked at the photo frame, the same picture of me standing by the window. And suddenly I saw it, the woman in the photo was looking past me. As if she had already left, leaving only her shell behind. After breakfast, he said he had things to do. I nodded. When the door closed, the silence became real, without a trace of his presence. I put on my coat, grabbed my camera, and just walked out. Without a destination. The city was cold but fresh. People were rushing, children were feeding pigeons. I walked slowly, as if I were learning to walk again. At the intersection, there was a boy with a roll in his hands. He was throwing crumbs to the birds. The sun was shining through the branches and falling on his cheek. I raised my camera. Click. The photo came out a little blurry, but lively. I continued shooting, shop windows, stairs, passers-by. The shots were chaotic, imperfect, but real. And for the first time, my hand held the camera confidently, without permission. I sat down on a bench and scrolled through the photos. Everything was there: movement, air, breath. The things I had been missing so much. I opened my phone, selected the photo of the boy with the pigeons, and simply pressed publish. Without approval. Without comments. Without fear. Just a shot, mine. Somewhere nearby, someone was playing the guitar, a simple melody, without words. People walked by, not listening. But I listened. And I thought, I don't need to explain anything anymore. When I got home, the evening light was still in the kitchen. On the table was a frame with an old photo of me. I took the photo out and put it in a drawer. I replaced it with a new one, the boy with the pigeons, the sun on his face, a little blurry, but warm. Dan came home late. I was pouring tea. Was it a good day? He asked. Yes. Very. What did you do? I went for a walk. I took some photos. He froze. Are you taking photos again? Yes, I replied simply. He was silent. Then he said quietly. You've changed. Maybe, I said. I just see things differently. He didn't ask any more questions. And for the first time, I didn't care. That night, I lay there watching the light from the street pass through the blinds and fall in stripes on the wall. I thought about my mother. About my father. About myself. The light seeped through the cracks, not evenly, not perfectly. But enough to see. I woke up late. The kitchen smelled of coffee and toasted bread. Dan was already there, walking around, moving plates, scrolling through his phone. I lay there and listened to him breathing, to the spoon clinking against the cup. It was a strange feeling, as if we were living in the same house but in different worlds. When I came out, he didn't even look up. Didn't sleep well? I slept. You seem distant. I'm thinking, I replied. He put down his phone and looked straight at me. You've grown distant. And I don't understand why. I'm trying. I see, I said. But maybe it's not just about who's trying. His face changed. Again with the maybe? Again with the hints? Dan, it's hard for me when even feelings have to be right. He came closer, walking around the table. I just want things to be good. I don't want us to play games. I'm not playing games, I said calmly. I just don't want to explain the obvious. His voice broke. The obvious? You're acting like I'm your enemy. No, I replied. Just not my savior. He froze, then turned away abruptly. The cup hit the sink, coffee splattered on the wall. You're running away, he shouted. You always run away. Maybe, I said. But this time, from you. He turned around. His eyes showed fear, confusion, and anger all at once. What now? I got up and took my jacket. Nothing. I'm just leaving. Where? It doesn't matter. He took a step forward. Anna, don't do this. You can't just leave. We're a family. I zipped up my jacket. Love isn't ownership, I said. And it's not control. He pressed his lips together, as if holding back tears or anger. You never loved me. I looked straight at him. I did. I just don't lose myself in it anymore. I opened the door. The light from the street hit my eyes, the air was cold and clear. I won't let love be my chains anymore, I said from the doorway. He was silent. I didn't turn around. The door closed with a soft thud. And the silence that followed was so deep that it rang in my ears. I stood on the stairs as the tension slowly eased, as if after a long illness. The sun was shining outside. I breathed in the air and just walked away, without thinking where to. The camera hung on my shoulder. I picked it up and pointed it at the sky, simple, bright, cloudless. Click. Nothing special. Just light in a dark frame. But for the first time, mine. Several months passed. Winter slowly faded away, and early spring brought light that no longer needed to be captured, it was just there. I learned not to wait for messages, not to count the days, not to look back. Dan didn't write anymore. At first, I still checked my phone, even when I knew there was nothing there. Then I stopped. The emptiness became familiar, even gentle. The silence no longer frightened me, it held me. I went to see my dad again. The same house by the river, the smell of bread, windows covered in dew. He was standing on the porch when I got out of the car. "I knew you'd come," he smiled. "Of course. I always come when the light changes." Everything inside was familiar, the kettle under a towel, old books, the camera on the table, the one I had given him. Dad picked it up and looked at me. "I'm finally catching the light again. Want to see?" We sat down next to each other. He showed me his shots, the river at dawn, the neighbor's dog, wet grass, a girl on a bike. "They're beautiful," I said. "And you?" he asked. "Do you take pictures?" "A little. Not technically, just when I feel like it." "Show me." I turned on the camera. On the screen was a boy with pigeons, the sun in a puddle, a reflection on the glass. Simple things, but alive. Dad looked for a long time, then said quietly, "You've learned to see. Not just to look, to see." I smiled. "Probably, yes." We sat by the window, drinking tea. The light glided over his face, over the cup, over my hands. I thought, this moment will disappear, like all the others. But right now it is here. And that's enough. When Dad went out into the yard, I stayed in the room. My camera was lying on the table. I picked it up and pointed it at the window. In the reflection, me. No makeup, in a simple shirt, with circles under my eyes, but calm. Click. On the screen, light, glass, half of my face in shadow. No filters, no perfection. Just a frame. And for the first time, I didn't want to fix it. I turned off the camera and put it on the table. Inside, there was silence. Not empty, but pure. Like after a storm, everything is still wet, but it's breathing. I was no longer looking for the right words. I wasn't waiting for someone to see me. I saw myself. When the sun went lower, I went out into the yard. Dad was standing by a tree, photographing the sky. I raised my hand and waved. He smiled back. The light passed through the branches, touching my face, my hands, the ground. And I thought, I don't need to catch it, it's already inside me. This is not a victory. Not an escape. Just silence. The kind where you can finally breathe.